Hey, Mr. Mayor, we are live and ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. Time is 6:05 p.m. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Kennedy.
Here.
Swick.
Here.
Peyton. Looks like she's going to be absent. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we'll mark her as absent. Keithley.
Here.
Langbart.
Here.
And Rojas.
Here.
Okay. We have 5 of 6 council members present, and we do have a quorum. And Heidi or Liz, if one of you will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Item C, excuse absences. We will note that Councilmember Peyton is absent tonight. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve. We do have an error in here, but I'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, and then we'll discuss it here when we have a motion on the table.
Motion on the table to approve tonight's agenda.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Langbart with a second by Councilmember Keithley. Before we move into discussion, it was brought to my attention that item H1 is a public presentation for items not on the agenda. We have HEA signed up tonight. That should be moved to item G1. So what I'll need to do this correctly is if someone would just offer up, unless there's any other further discussion on the agenda, I would need somebody to offer up a quick amendment to take item H1 and make it G1.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to take item H1 and become G1.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas for an amendment to take item H1, move it to item G1 in its proper place. It's been seconded by Councilmember Kennedy. Any further discussion on the amendment before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment to move item H1 to item G1. Kennedy.
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Keithley.
Aye.
Langbart.
Aye.
And Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, amendment is approved with 5 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Okay, that'll take us back to the main motion for tonight's agenda approval as amended. Any further discussion on the amended agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on item D, agenda approval as amended. All those in favor, Kennedy.
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Keithley.
Aye.
Langbart.
Aye.
And Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative, 1 absent, and that is item D. Tonight's agenda is approved as amended. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item 1, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting, March 11th, 2024. Item 2A, ordinance 24, that's ordinance introduction. And we have ordinance 24-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, amending chapter 2.22 Fire Department with a recommended public hearing on 4/15/24. And then we have item 3, resolution. Resolution 24-31, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, supporting a Homer Electric Association HEA grant application to rebuild South Kachemak Bay. And from what I understand, this is something that we had discussed a while back, and we will be getting an additional, which was supported, and we will be getting an additional update on that this evening. So during the public presentation. So that's tonight's consent agenda. Does any member wish to remove any item for further discussion separately? Okay, if not, then I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll put in a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Rojas to approve tonight's consent agenda with a second by Councilmember Langbart. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor: Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Langbart,
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. Item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none. Item G, 1, public presentation prior notice, and this is Homer Electric Association, and this will be regarding the Kachemak Bay Electric Infrastructure Upgrade, Resilience, and Innovative Partnership, otherwise known as GRIP.
Well, we can ship power, but we may not be able to work Zoom. So I'll try one more time. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear now.
Okay, great. We were on our best behavior because we weren't sure if we were on mute. So now we'll really clean it up now that we know it's serious. Again, Carrie Ann Baker, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Homer Electric, and I want to introduce our COO, Rob Montgomery, who's just joined us from Seward. Rob's going to be doing the majority of the presentation to talk about the South Kachemak rebuild project. It's, that project is really you're no stranger to that project. We've talked about it before and our goals for upgrading the system. And one of the things that we talked about the last time I was here was some of our communications with Seldovia and Seldovia Village Tribe, as well as Port Graham and Nanwalek. And I've worked with Heidi for about 3 years now on that. And I mean, she can speak for herself, but I do think, and I hope that the city feels like we improve that communication, both with our efficiency with when we do have an outage, our auto response, but also personally being available when there's an outage, posting in a way that it gets to your community specifically by going through and the chatter box. And so I'm really proud of the efforts that we've made with Heidi's help and guidance. And so I just really appreciate that partnership. And I look to today as kind of that next step in our commitment. When we were here before, we said, we know that there are some upgrades that need to happen over there. We are going to come up with a plan. We're going to seek grant monies. And so I'm just really proud to be here and passionate about this project to begin with. So one of the things that we've been searching, we've tried a couple of different ways, not as successful, but we've applied under the bipartisan infrastructure law, under the Grid Resilience and Innovative Partnerships. You'll hear people refer to it as GRIP, for about $60 million. And here's how it started. You put in a concept paper, which is pretty significant endeavor on our part. And you basically compete against different projects across the country. So HEA put in a concept paper that is then reviewed, and with they call it a go or a no-go. And so they're basically telling you, we like your concept. We think it might be able to be successful. If that's the case, they say, we recommend that you go forward with a full application. And then they have sort of these check boxes of here's where we think you need to make improvements. So we received on February 29th the go ahead, and then asking for some additional technical and financial backup for those kind of things. So that's what we're working on. It's due April 17th. And so we've been pretty fast and furious, and we feel really confident on the plan, the electrical side of it. But what we're looking from your community is input on the community benefits. And then if we've missed the mark on the technical, you guys have given us that feedback before. We've taken it back, and I do think we've come back successfully, not perfectly, but made the improvements you suggested. So it's really important to us that you do give us that feedback if you think we're going down the wrong road for your community. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Rob. But I did want to say, Liz, we had to switch rooms at the last minute, and I'm hoping that you would be able to share the PowerPoint from your location.
Yep. Just give me a second. I can go ahead and pull that up.
Sorry. Oh,
You're good. Thank you. Let's see if I can get the camera right here. Appreciate the opportunity. I wish we had had the opportunity to be there in person, which we were planning to do. But instead, we're going to have to do this remotely. And again, we'll be glad to take any questions when we're done. Liz, if you want to go ahead and just go to the second slide. Thought I would begin just by giving an overview of the existing infrastructure feeding Seldovia and the other communities today. So if you look, our undersea cable begins off the spit, the end of the Homer spit, and it goes directly across the bay over to McKeon Flats. Now from McKeon Flats, this is a 7,200 volt cable. From McKeon Flats, it's then built to overhead construction, and it travels through the terrain that you see approximately 20 miles to Seldovia. And then from Seldovia, the line remains overhead, and it goes directly to Port Graham, again, through some very rugged terrain. And then from Port Graham, it travels approximately 4 miles over to Nanwalek. And most of that overhead line, there's a great deal of it that's actually attached to trees. Some of you may know that already. The issues that we have today, if you look at the section of line between McKeon Flats and Seldovia, that's where most of the outages that we have on our system occur for Seldovia. And then, of course, Nanwalek and Port Graham experience those same outages. But their issue is multiplied because the section of line, the overhead line from Seldovia to Port Graham, we also get a number of outages on that system. We regularly experience high winds and other weather elements that affect our ability to serve reliable power. So now, if you look at the new line, so Liz, if you'll tap, what we have here is you can see this cable, undersea cable, begins at the base of the Homer Spit around Mariners Beach. It's a 17-mile undersea cable, and it doubles the voltage capacity from the old line. So this one will bring in power at 14,400 volts. Okay. So once we get into Seldovia, we will install a battery bank there as well. And it's a 1.9 megawatt battery bank that will stabilize the voltage before we then take the power from Seldovia. And instead of going to Port Graham, we're going to go over to Nanwalek. And if you see that, that will be a second undersea cable, and that cable is about 12 miles. Okay. Now again, once it leaves Seldovia, we're still going to, the voltage level is still going to be 4,200. I mean, 14,400, excuse me. And then when we get to Nanwalek, we'll have a transformer. We're going to reduce the voltage in Nanwalek before carrying it over to Port Graham, back at the 7,200 volt capacity level. Now, what this will do from a reliability standpoint is it's going to bypass the old route, which went through the terrain, all the rugged terrain, and also the fact that it was overhead construction, so it was more exposed. So now with this new cable going directly to Seldovia, your outages should be greatly reduced. And as you can imagine, when you had outages in the past, because of the terrain, it was difficult for our crews to be able to get in materials and equipment, and that took time. So the duration of your outages, first of all, they should be mostly eliminated, but if you do have them, hopefully they will be of shorter duration. Okay. So the same will be true for Port Graham and Nanwalek, because with the undersea cable going directly over to Nanwalek, then again, you're bypassing that rugged terrain and the exposure of the overhead power line. So that's one of the big benefits. Another huge benefit of the project is this now gives Homer Electric 2 ways of delivering power over to Seldovia and the villages. The primary line will be the new one that would be built that runs directly to Seldovia. But if for some reason we were to lose that cable, we would still be able to deliver power on the old overhead structures. And the same is true for Nanwalek and Port Graham. If we lose the old, the new cable, then we would be able to feed using the old structures that were in place before. So that creates loops in our system, which is really what you're trying to do. Anytime you have an electric grid, is you want to build redundancy into the system. So that's a huge benefit. Now, another big benefit for Seldovia and for the communities is that attached to our cable will be fiber optics cable. And that fiber optics cable will run directly into Seldovia, but it'll also be carried over to Nanwalek and into Port Graham as well. And one thing I forgot to mention is between Nanwalek and Port Graham, we'll come off the undersea cable, and we will build a brand new infrastructure, poles, power lines, hardware from Nanwalek over to Port Graham. So it will be greatly upgraded, the infrastructure will, from what it is today. So with the fiber optics, the communities are going to have opportunities for the expanded technologies, expanded communications. And I would see this being a big benefit from, economic development opportunities, commercial opportunities, that along with the increased voltage that will be feeding the area. Certainly from a commercial standpoint, there may be opportunities that you all did not have before. I think along with the increased reliability, the fiber optics, the increased voltage, the battery system that'll be installed in Seldovia. And one note on the battery storage system is that if we were to suffer an outage, the battery is capable of storage up to 6 to 8 hours. So based on the load that's on the system, you may be able to extend that time frame a little bit. But so that's another big benefit. So I think when you add all of these things up, you're just looking at a much better quality of life for all of your residents in Seldovia and in the other communities as well. Now, what we're looking at is if all of this gets approved with the engineering design work, the permitting work, the various phases of construction, we wouldn't anticipate energizing those 2 undersea cables probably until toward the end of 2029. So that is pretty much an overview of what we'll be doing, and we'll be glad, myself and Carrie Ann, to take any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate the presentation and Carrie Ann. And yeah, I can just say, and we'll certainly allow, everyone to speak and ask questions or add additional comments. But yeah, I remember the original presentation before when this first came up here, and holy cow, it's probably already been a year or two, maybe 3. I don't know. I know the time has gone by fast. Carrie Ann, since you guys came over and gave the presentation, and I know everyone that got to hear it then was super excited, especially with the tag along of the fiber cable. Obviously, that's huge for this side of the bay. Power reliability, increased power reliability. I think at that time we had some horrible communications going on with being able to get the generator to start up, and yeah, a lot of frustration. So, but yeah, and obviously our system now is 100% better than it was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So after all the bugs got worked out, but I think, with this resolution, I'm certainly absolutely in support of it. Yeah, this is a life changer for a lot of people, on this side of the bay, just in terms of reliability. Even with or without the fiber optic, just the ability to have reliable power. I think that's big. That's big when you live remote and you're off the road system, right? Because a lot of communities. I work for a general contractor by trade, and we work with so many villages, and it's crazy the amount of power problems where the entire villages they're down for days, weeks, the whole generator thing. It's great, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and it always breaks at the most inopportune time when it's in the middle of winter, right? I mean,
Right.
storm,
Christmas Day.
you can't fly your crews out. I mean, that's when it breaks. Never on a sunny day, at 12 o'clock in the middle of a day. So, yeah, I fully support this. And yeah, if you guys had some comments, and we'll open it up for others as well.
Yeah, Mayor Campbell, I can't stress enough having the backup feeds from Homer across the bay, and having that second option should we lose our primary. And then at that point, your battery would be option 3 in some cases, and that would make your existing generators option 4.
Yep.
So, when you start looking at it from that perspective, the fuel that you would be saving and just getting off fossil fuel altogether as part of this project, I mean, that's huge as well.
Mhm.
Well, one might be able to argue that if you look at the other power generation around the state of Alaska, if this project were to go through, and it's no fault of our own, it's just by design the way this works on the redundancy, but we might have one of the most reliable systems in the entire state of Alaska. I mean, really, when you look at it in terms of backup.
I am really glad that you said this, and that's part of how we are pitching that, and that you realize that is trying to show both what sort of a microgrid could look like, somebody who could be disconnected, but also what it looks like to have a community connected to the larger rail belt grid. And so that design was intentional. A few years back, this was not as much of a fun meeting as I knew this one would be. But we really did take your comments to heart, and I think we got a lot better at predicting where outages would be, and so we threw our resources towards what we thought were the biggest pain centers to bring down the outages to begin with. And then we got a lot better about speaking in a way that people wanted to be spoken to and communicating. And so having that two-way back and forth, and having you comment on the like you did about having the redundancies, which has been built in, it's really important to us, because we know a lot about producing power. We know a lot about, sending the bill out to bill you for producing power.
Sure.
But there are just things about your community that might not be readily apparent to us. And sometimes we may just be bumbling along thinking we're doing the right thing, but because we're not there every single day, we do try and come over quite a bit and be involved in the chamber and do those things. But we really rely on this group to give us feedback and give it to us directly. And we may not be able to respond on a dime because we are a utility and it takes us time, but we do listen and take it back and try to address those concerns.
Yeah, no, we appreciate those comments for sure. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, no, and one other point, with this increase voltage that you'll have coming in. Basically, you're going from a single phase power to a 3-phase power. Certainly there's economic opportunities, commercial opportunities that you could look at, but another option that you guys could consider at that point is renewable energy. You could have renewable energy projects on your side of the bay that, the infrastructure then would be able to handle it.
Yeah, no, that's another fantastic, great point. One follow-up to that, thinking through 2 questions actually on the battery bank, and I don't remember from the original presentation, would that extend down the line to Port Graham and Nanwalek too, or would that just be local to Seldovia?
Well, the battery, Mayor Campbell, is really to stabilize the voltage as it comes in across the bay.
Gotcha.
So then it'll be pushed over to Nanwalek. Now, having said that, if you were to have an outage and you actually use the battery, fill that period of time, yes, Nanwalek and Port Graham would also benefit.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a great one. And then last one, I'm sorry, I'm hogging up at the time here, but while they're fresh in my mind. So it's always kind of and it's not really a joke because it's actually a lot of cash, but if you go out to our landfill, I think all the time, and I just kind of snicker that we probably have more appliances in our landfill per capita than anyone, and that's a result of the crappy way they make appliances nowadays, but it's a function of a lot of brownouts, right? Voltage surges. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that an underground line that's not dangling in the trees all the time during windstorms would hopefully, and the battery would hopefully help stabilize the voltage surges, either high or low, that are causing some of those issues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, as I said during the presentation, the fact that you have the overhead lines and it's going through some very difficult terrain. It's my understanding you guys get high winds on a fairly regular basis there in other winter storms. So in this particular case, it will absolutely help with those issues. Good news is if you were to have an issue on this new undersea cable, again, you would still have the old overhead lines as your backup source.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for answering those. I'll open it up to anyone else on council.
Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hey, I just want to let you folks know that I'm 100% behind this. I just wished it was going to be sooner. I haven't been in the community a long time, 4 years, but in the 4 years, I've experienced a lot of the appliances that Jeremiah's talking about. I have one of the larger buildings in town, and the repair cost to low voltage has cost me in the neighborhood of $10,000. There's several upgrades we'd like to do, but we just don't have the power. And that's coupled with the power in the community, and also the transmission line to the building's just not big enough to take what I want it to do. And so we're stuck for propane appliances and stuff, when tomorrow I'd upgrade that whole thing to electric, but I can't. We just don't have the power. So I'm pretty excited about it. The fiber optic and the communications, I wished it didn't have to wait that long, but it is what it is. I did have one question, maybe I missed it, but are you putting a battery pack down in Nanwalek as well?
We would not be. We would be putting the battery bank in Seldovia.
Okay, so that other little, maybe it was just a building I seen on your map.
No, I think what you were referring to is we'll be putting a transformer in Nanwalek.
Oh, okay.
So that we can reduce the voltage before it goes over to Port Graham.
Okay. And will you folks be looking at some of the infrastructure for upgrades as well along with that?
In any particular area?
In town here.
There will be some upgrades that we'll have to make based on the other work that we're doing. What those are today, that'll be a part of the whole engineering design.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to follow up just on one program, and I'm always amazed at people. You guys probably know about this program, but we do finance for some of these upgrades. So when you do go forward and you're wanting to upgrade some of your appliances or any of your infrastructure, I would encourage you to look online on Homer Electric's webpage, because as a member, you're entitled to financing for up to $10,000 with a credit check. And then we also know that some people may not be doing business at the level that you're doing. So we do have $1,500 that we will finance with good payment history with no credit check, so that we make sure we're hitting all different areas. So if that's something that you would like to look into as we move forward, that would be great. And then just letting other people know that those are options.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's parts of that I didn't know, but we have been on the phone with the electrician, with the engineers over there. They're aware of the issue. So it's just about a matter of getting it funded and completed, you know. But I'm excited about it.
Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, John. Vivian, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much for your presentation. And this has been a process that we've been working on for a while. And I think the community really wants to hear just what you said tonight. And that is that there'll always be a backup. There will be redundancy in case, that's the fear of getting in a new system, and that we wouldn't have something to back it up. So I applaud you on that. And hopefully you will get the monies, and hopefully we will have something in a few years. But thank you so much for your presentation, your hard work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else on council?
Yes. Jeremiah, thank you for bringing up the issue of appliances. That's something that hadn't occurred to us until this year. We actually went through 2 brand new ovens, which is really difficult with a 2nd-story kitchen and living in Seldovia. Before we realized, because they're not electric ranges, but the starter on the propane igniter was causing everything to burn out when we were having power outages. So that was something interesting to learn. You guys answered my first question, which was going to be what the generator status was going to be, and that it'll continue to be used there. My question is, have you guys proposed an area for this battery pack in Seldovia? And if so, what size, like what are we looking at size-wise?
Not that I'm aware. You know, I just stepped into this project a few weeks back. So that will be part of the overall engineering design that we're working on.
You guys own, do you guys own any land over here that you would be utilizing, or is that something that you're going to need to be looking for? And if so, is there a certain area that you know it's going to have to be in, so that we can maybe partner with you on helping decide where would be the best for our community as we're having these discussions?
So it'll be made based on the technical where it would do the most good. So our engineers will do a study, but we absolutely would be willing to share that with you. And if there's ranges of where that can go, we wouldn't mind doing that. I mean, there may be some property that the city has that they might be willing. You know, we just don't know where it's going to be until that study comes back. We've done some initial studies on the undersea cable, but once we get over to the physical land, I'd be lying if I told you we had a great idea where we were going to place it, because we just don't know yet.
Okay, perfect.
But fortunately, the city owns some land where cables have to come out of the water, so that's good.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're alluding to. So yeah, I think Carrie Ann, back when you guys came over and did the original, to kind of follow up where Ashley was going on terms of size, I think the Tesla batteries in just outside of Soldotna there at your plant, I think either you or Brad, someone had commented that, you know, maybe it looked like something similar in size. I don't know how many megawatts each of those batteries are over there, but I thought there was some reference to like 1 or 2 of those or something, you know, generally.
It would look similar to one of those. In fact, I made a proposal that made our engineers a little squeamish when I said, why don't we just take one of those and move it over? You're not supposed to do that, I've learned. You need to do the studies before you make the suggestion that you haul one of those down over across the Seldovia. But yes, it would look similar in size, and you probably driven by them. They're pretty amazing, and they're the most boring thing to tour. Because if everything's going well, it's literally just a battery pack in a box. But what they're doing in terms of smoothing out their frequency and making it so that we can put different alternatives while firming it up is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and I mean, you drive by any substation in Alaska, and they're pretty mundane nowadays. You just look at infrastructure and you don't think nothing of it. And people maybe most people driving by don't even notice that there's 30 or 40 of them Tesla batteries all piled up next that can run half the whole peninsula for a given period of time. I remember you guys gave us the batteries themselves are absolutely amazing of what the power they can produce for a short period of time while you're working on repairs and stuff. So any other questions, comments from council before we go to public? Okay, Liz, do we have anyone either in the audience or online signed up for public comment on this?
Yeah, we have Ecola.
Okay, great.
Hi, Ecola Collier. I am new to the conversation, but I was curious how this type of project gets funded.
So this is being funded through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And what they did through that law, as well as through that IIJA, is they released money specifically for energy to a bunch of federal departments. And then each of these departments have built up different grant programs. And so some of the ones that we've been looking for is for rural Alaska in particular, and just something that is unique to our service territory is that I kind of joked when we were back in DC, overland, by sea, by air, but just explaining, because we're trying to explain something that as simple as getting diesel. You're not going down to the 7-Eleven to get gas for your generator. Everything is coming in by barge, by ship, by plane. And so there's a big education process to it back in the federal government. We applied once before and didn't quite get the go ahead, but we did get the attention that we wanted. And this is one of the projects that I talk about every single time I am in DC. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is because I take the phone calls. Like I take Heidi's phone call on Christmas Eve. Like I want Santa coming and delivering presents. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a big education part trying to get people to understand that the communities that we're talking about, you can't just drive to them. We're not sending a lineman in a truck. Sometimes when an outage goes out, it's a day or two before we can even get somebody to fly us over or get over on the ship. So this is a federal, and then the matching part of the funds, the cost share will be something that is going to be put up by HEA. So it's part of our investment in this community and our entire system. And then it's also coming through the federal government. We have reached out to the state delegation, the federal delegation, the state delegation, as well as the Alaska Energy Authority. And this project has wide support across the board. So that's where it's being funded.
Wonderful. Thank you. That sounds great. In the future, once this is laid out, will any of those costs that HEA helped cover, will those be passed on to the end consumer as a member of the public?
Yes. So as a member owner of the electric cooperative, we share in all the expenses as well as the benefits. So that's when you get a capital credit, it's your share as a member owner of the cooperative. These costs will be divided among our 25,000 members. So it is not something that is just borne by Seldovia, which obviously when you take, let's say it's $1,000 and you divide it up by 25,000, versus having it just be Seldovia, Port Graham, and Nanwalek, the cost becomes a little bit different because it's shared by everyone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a few times that there could be potential issues with the underwater cable. What would some of those foreseen issues be?
Typically, you do not see a whole lot of issues with the undersea cables, but the world's not perfect. So you could have something that would go wrong with one of the cables where you might need to go in and do some maintenance work at some point. And if that was the case, having the existing overhead infrastructure will be a huge benefit.
Absolutely.
And the existing cable too, well, I think 25 is very, very young. They do over time. That existing undersea cable does have a shelf life. Now, because they're underground, a lot of times, or not underground, undersea, it is lasting a little bit longer, but eventually, age of life, they just wear out.
And will you continue to maintain the above ground lines? So when there is a big windstorm and something happens to the above ground line, even though we have an underwater option, will you be maintaining those?
We will, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Ecola.
Mayor Campbell, if I might, I know I'm a bit out of order. I probably should have mentioned at the outset that we have met with the village of Port Graham, as well as the village of Nanwalek and the Seldovia village tribe. So I probably should have mentioned that we are collaborating with all of the communities as well.
Yeah, no way. I just kind of assumed automatically that you guys were. I mean, obviously you're on a public outreach campaign here, and so not unexpected at all. So and I assume you've got widespread support from them, as well as both our state and federal congressional delegation. So luckily, our delegation, Alaska's a small state; it's remote. With our representative Peltola being from Bethel, Murkowski and Sullivan, they've been in there a long time, and they know the challenges in Alaska. So the way I understand it, the federal appropriation to the agency, if I'm following this, has been made. Now we're in so the money's there. We're just now in the competitive stage of competing against other folks either around the country and or maybe some other projects around Alaska too. Do you know if that's the case?
I do know that that's the case. So there's two different projects. There's a Real Built project that is larger, and it's the Willow to Healy project, but that is coming from it's the same law, but there's concept 1, concept 2, concept 3. We are not, to my knowledge, we are not competing against anyone else in Alaska for these dollars.
Under the grip dollars.
The grip. The other project that is moving forward is a different concept, so a different pot of money. It is a competitive award, so while it will be funded, we still have to get over the next hurdle.
Absolutely.
Between now and April 17th, we're estimating probably close to about 300 hours between the engineering, the community benefits plan, and putting our best foot forward. The good news is we will be in DC the week that this gets filed. And so we will again go in, and we're pretty good about telling the story. Our congressional delegation is easy, right? They understand our communities, they understand our state. It is an education process with some of the agencies, but we've been doing it for a while now. I've been doing it several years myself, and I think we're being heard. I always like to underpromise, but I am optimistic that we have people's attention.
Good. Yeah, put your best lobby hat on. So, so good. All right. Anyone else from the public? Heidi or Liz?
No, we have no other members from the public.
Okay, great. All right, last chance for council. Any final follow-up before we let these guys go? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Yeah, Zoom's fine. We've all adapted to it. So it's still always nice to get you guys over in person. So, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity again in the future here. So welcome, Rob, welcome aboard there, and good luck in your new endeavor. Carrie Ann, always good to see you, and thanks for the update and good luck. We wish you guys the best, and you can count on our support over on this side as well. Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Okay. Have a good evening, you guys. All right, great. Thanks everyone for that. Yeah, that's super exciting. Glad to see that moving ahead. yeah, hopefully they'll come up with a competitive proposal, and with any luck, they'll get picked. So yeah, obviously John, that 5-year time frame, yeah, the environmental permitting, all the regulatory agency review, yeah, it'll be long. So yeah, that's what it is, I imagine. So all right, that was item G. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone signed up for that tonight?
No, we do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Item I, committee and advisory board reports. I don't see any listed. Is that still the case?
That's still the case.
Okay, and item J, administrative reports. Looks like we have a finance report. That'll be the written report, and that, I believe, where's my agenda here? Finance is on page 23. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's got any additional questions on this. Got all the revenue funds, where they're at. We'll be getting a deep dive, obviously, as we're moving forward over the next month or so here, with additional work sessions. So
Mayor Campbell,
yep, go ahead, John.
I got a couple questions for Heidi. That permanent fund principal, that one there has increased quite a bit. That's from the 30,000 that was moved from the kiosks over there. Is that correct?
That is not correct. So that 30,000 was moved to the permanent fund principal that's in AMLIP. So that's the 74,977.
Okay, yeah, I'm
So-
sorry, that's exact. I just looked at the wrong line.
So the 586, you're seeing interest there.
Right. Okay, so I just misspoke, but the permanent fund principal, it went there, correct?
Correct. In the AMLIP. So there's two pots of permanent fund money.
Right. And then the vehicle replacement fund, I see last month it wasn't, I noticed that it hadn't changed last month and now it has.
Correct.
I didn't say anything, but how much did we end up spending over on that truck?
I can't remember the exact number off of the top of my head, but we did come under budget. I think
Okay. Okay.
I'll have to come back with you with the number.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council on the finance report tonight? Okay. If none, item J2 will be the public works maintenance report, and that is on page 27. Looks like always appreciate Jordan's reports, and sewer debacle at the septic lift station has cooled down. So that's good. Things are getting, as Heidi had talked about earlier, things are slowly getting worked out here, pieces and parts.
Mayor Campbell, I did have one comment about that, but I was gone from town when we had this last big melt. Was that pump running pretty hard down there or didn't seem to be affected?
I'll double check on how hard it was running, but from what I understand, it's handling whatever load it's receiving very well. So.
Okay, well, I just was curious what changed, from the last stormwater runoff to this one, if maybe it didn't.
I'll double check on that. I didn't hear much of a change, but the pump, we're on a completely different pump, a fabricated pump system
I seen that.
that's operating.
Okay.
And it's able to carry it. But I didn't hear about any excessive I&I this time around. I'll double check on that though.
Heidi, any new water leaks yet, or that the guys have noticed in the roads with, I'm sure we're gonna get some here with spring breakup coming, so.
So there's the one that they believe is happening over by Vista, but that we've known about that one for a little while.
Yeah.
I have not, and Jordan's pretty good about making me aware immediately of any changes in water. This is the time of year. Actually, we probably would have normally seen it a week or two ago. And Rodsy's here, he can speak to it. He's been up there recently as well, but nothing huge or significant at this point.
No big spikes on the meter, so that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Okay, great. Any other questions, comments from council on the public utilities report, maintenance report? Okay, next one is the Harbor Masters report. That'll be found on page 28. Looks like some FAA stuff Layla had to do with some compliance stuff. Narcan kits now mounted in the harbor office. That's good. And got all the annual billings out, so that's good. That's where we'll see our spike in revenue for those funds, for that fund. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I seen somewhere in this report that they were talking about fixing a couple of pedestals out there that were broken. Do we know how they were broken and what's our procedure for that? In other words, you know where I'm going with this, right?
I hear you.
Okay.
I can bring that back to you as well.
Okay.
I don't have that on.
I'm just curious how that plays out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Were those pedestals on land, or were those on the float system, John?
I believe they're the ones on the float system, correct?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is, accidents happen.
Mhm.
So what's our procedure to deal with that?
Mhm.
Things happen.
Yeah, I think, if it was a customer on the customer side, we do have a fee in our fee schedule that can go back onto the customer for that.
To replace the pedestal?
Correct.
Okay.
But they also have wear and tear and general damage.
I know and then the saltwater stuff on them and everything. I get that. But I was thinking about, there was a boat incident down there and it's pretty expensive to fix it last year. And I'm just wondering what the city's recourse is for those type of things when they have an accident.
They're billed
Okay.
for the maintenance and replacement.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on your upcoming and maintenance list. The second bullet says order and fix the bases on 2 new pedestals that were damaged. That's all it says.
Right. That's the one I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. I probably should have asked it when Layla was here, but it's a personal question, but I could be anybody in my slip at the marina, so I'm gonna ask it now that we've been here. Are all of the slips supposed to have their own water spigot? And okay, and then I guess how is that delineated, because we all pay the same amount, but then I know our slip doesn't have a water spigot that works. They just took, it used to have one, it looks like, but it's not there anymore. And so we always have to borrow another one on a daily basis from somebody use a spigot from another spot. So like I said, it's an observation that does affect me personally, but I wanted to bring it up because I had just realized, because we use every day, and if that other person was using it every day, I just wasn't sure if that's something, as we're looking at upgrades at the harbor, because the water goes through, but there's just nothing to hook up there. And so then you're like, whose hose goes on it? Who gets to use it at the time? I look at John because it's his that I use. He doesn't care, but.
And you could correct me, but I think has all the float system been converted over to PEX, or is there still some hard lines down there running across the slips?
They've been upgrading as they go, as they can, but I'll double check on the status if there's any hard lines left.
Yeah, if you've got PEX as your main running across there, Ashley.
It is PEX, and that's where we were like, we could just put one in, but and then we were not going to, but that was just something because it isn't that hard to do since it is PEX. And then that way you're also not losing hoses, or if you have your hose and it's right there, you can keep it hooked up during that time of the year and not have to worry about people tripping and pulling, because we're having to pull it all the way down the dock and down the other dock. And
Yeah, I would think that would be just a simple request.
we're right there where all the people are walking off the boat. So
Harbor
it's just,
master.
again, I'm taking some observations over the last couple summers, and
We will put that on the list, and maybe that's an opportunity to put it out there for, I'm sure she knows which ones needs to be fixed, but
and
to
I say I
get
haven't
more
walked
input
it,
from other people on
but it would be
other
good
issues.
to take a look. And because when you we're all paint that base, and the electric's different because you're only charged if you're hooked up to it, but water is something that's supposed to be available for everybody.
We'll add it to the list.
All right, any other additional questions, comments on the Harbor Masters report? Okay, that concludes item J, all the administrative reports from the administration. Item K, public hearings, none. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M1, new business, resolution 24-32, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, awarding the contract for request for proposals number 2-24, professional consultation services for the Jackaloff Bay Dock Replacement Project to blank, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. This will be found on page 32 of your packet, and we'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a completed resolution in the laydown, and I apologize for the delay. This was very exciting. We received 4 very competitive bids, and one needed to do our due diligence. So it took us a few extra days to get a notice of intent to award out. We were able to call some references and receive feedback. Mayor Campbell was able to review the applications, as well as Councilmember Kennedy. And at the end of the day, while they were all close, one proposal came ahead of everybody, just slightly, but enough. And that was Moffett and Nickel Inc. So that's page 3 of the laydown, and there's a notice of intent that follows to award. And in the next couple of days, we will have been requested to provide the scoring sheets as well as the winning proposal, and we'll publicize those here shortly so that the other proposers can have that information, as well as the public. But for now, that was the decision, Moffett and Nickel Inc., and we'll be upon the approval of this resolution moving forward with them, hopefully at the speed of light, to get our NEPA complete and the other permitting, and be able to move ahead with having those funds released for Jackaloff, and then eventually, hopefully, construction.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate that. Any questions, comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Just for clarification, so this award is for just the $316,200 for the engineering, and is that correct?
Through the mayor. So that is the limit. That is our pre-award authorization and what we had in our application for the permitting and project consultation or project management. So the firm themselves will complete the permitting for us, and they will also be like an owner's representative, provide project management for the construction of the facility.
Okay. So for the actual construction, they are the organization that we're picking.
No, they are the owner's representative. So what they'll do is they'll help us with our compliance, our procurement, our compliance, the bid package for the RFP. And then they will also be able to provide inspection services, look at change orders, and facilitate. I think they even help with certified payroll. They'll kind of hold our hands through the process of the project being complete so that we make sure that we are meeting our grant requirements and are compliant.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So then in addition to that too, they'll also come up with a full set of design criteria, project specifications. They'll come up with all that. And then basically the city will work with them on the design criteria that we want to see. And then when they're all done with that and we all agree on everything, and the project will go out to bid for our contractor. And then the contractor will get selected, and then they will basically finalize the design, based on the criteria and the bridge documents, if you will, for the concept that we want to see. And then, so basically we know when we're done with this first process, we'll know what we're getting. We might not know all the nuts and bolts and exactly what everything looks like. The contractor will finish that up, on some sort of, either proposal, best value, low bid, whatever the case may be, based on the package that is designed by Moffitt Nickel Inc. So, just one other additional comment. I did get to take a look at all 4 proposals, and they were all very good. That's obviously a very competitive market, so they all did put a lot of time and effort into those. And I did not get involved in the decision making or scoring process, but just looked at them for completeness and where they were, what their submission looked like. So it was I was glad to see that. I didn't know if we were going to get anyone that was interested in it. So to get 4 very good proposals was pretty exciting. So
Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Myself as well, I was pretty surprised at the 4 bids as well. I do have one question for Heidi. Did you ever figure out if they were, we're gonna stay on board through cradle to grave of that process? In other words, with our reporting documents and like we talked about there?
Yes, correct. They will help.
Okay, cool.
Anyone else on council? Okay. Let's see. Will anyone sign up from the public to comment on resolution 24-32?
No, we do not have anybody signed up for this.
Okay, we'll bring it back to council for final action this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept resolution 24-32.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve resolution 24-32, selecting Moffitt Nickel as our RFP winner, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute any appropriate documents moving forward. We have a second by, I believe that was Council Member Keithley. Yep. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 24-32. All those in favor: Kennedy.
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Keithley.
Aye.
Langbart.
Aye.
And Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5 in the affirmative, 1 absent, and that is the passage of resolution 24-32, selecting Moffitt Nickel to move forward as our RFP selection. Great, thank you. Heidi, you're good with all of that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I meant to mention that we also did have a member of the public who requested to be part of, or to be a part of the bid opening process and reviewed documents as well, just for full transparency. When we open these bids and do the review, they are open for the public, and we did have a member in attendance. So
Good, great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Appreciate that. So good. Okay, item M2, Seldovia Planning Commission, Commercial Business District Subcommittee Final Report. This will be found on page 47 of your packet. Just to be clear, we're not any action tonight. This was simply, I had asked Heidi to make sure just to give the council kind of a courtesy copy of this before there's a whole nother process, and I'll let Heidi speak to that, where this is going to go with the planning department. But I just wanted to get any initial thoughts, comments tonight, if there's anything to pass along, and then certainly members are willing to and able to participate in the planning process as individual members, because I know there's a number of folks that are impacted by these decisions here. So Heidi, anything else you want to share?
I think you had it, Mr. Mayor. This is still the beginning of a very long process. So this will go, and any feedback that you guys have or provide will go back to the Planning Commission, and they will do an initial review, and then that will be when it gets into the nitty gritty of legalities and how it impacts the rest of the community, being able to draft it into an ordinance form, of several public hearing processes through that. Public's welcome to attend any meeting, provide comments on any of the discussion, and then it will eventually come back to council, hopefully in a more final draft form. If you guys want any joint work sessions in between or at the end, we can discuss that as that comes up. And then council will have the opportunity to go through a similar process if desired, or introduction and then passage. But this is still a long ways out. This is just an initial preview or review, so that if you guys have any immediate feedback for the Planning Commission as they begin working on this process, they can be able to hear that from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. Hopefully everyone's got a chance to at least peruse through this a little bit. It's there's a 6-page document. There's a lot of recommendations that came out of that committee, and I'm sure there's a lot more discussion that'll be had moving forward. So open it up to any comments, questions from council.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
I can tell you my phone rang off the hook today. I was glad to see in the documents today. I spent most of the afternoon reading this, and I've got quite a few things highlighted in that. And I wonder how much of it is highlighted because I just didn't have the time to do the homework and be properly informed, and how much of it is really an issue that I'm hearing about from community members. So the big question I have is, when is the next meeting? When are you looking for a response back? I'd be willing to share that with, both the Planning Commission and the city office. I'm just glad we're not going to make a decision here tonight.
Through the mayor, yes, thank you. The Planning Commission meeting is April 3rd, and I appreciate that people are reaching out and providing feedback. There were a few topics that there wasn't a consensus of the group, but we know in a community, any community, there's always going to be people that aren't fully in agreement on a topic. So those discussions will continue.
Thank you, Heidi. And thanks, John, for bringing that up. Anyone else with any just initial comments, feedback?
Trying to think of how to phrase. I kind of have a question because as many of us had people reaching out, and I think one of the biggest concerns that we were all personally reached out had to do directly with some of the zoning and how it potentially contradicts some of the comprehensive plan, and things haven't been changed by then, or that it might not look the same. And one of my questions is, when when the commercial business district was zoned as such, how did that affect if there was a single family home that was built as a single family home in that district, how was that handled during that time? Because I realized that's something that I haven't had brought up, because as I was looking at and I'll say it because we've all reached out by people about it, the few parcels, there's 3 of them down on the other side of the pavilion that are part of that. They're at least as I started looking, they were built a long time ago. I wanted to see, I was like, when were they built and what were they built as? And they were built as single family homes. And so I didn't have the time to go look at all of the parcels. And I was just curious, like that history, and maybe give us a refresher, because I haven't been able to attend all the meetings and be in that nitty gritty.
So through the mayor, yes, thank you. That's an excellent question, because we did do a deep dive on that a couple of times. So the districts were formed after or during urban renewal. So after the 1964 earthquake, urban renewal came into the community and rebuilt or built homes. And part of that process was that they had to have sorry, I just blanked what I was going to say, a zoning code. And so we have beautiful zoning maps that were hand drawn in colors of what the zones would be. And those zones are what you see today, with the exception of, I can't remember the year off the top of my head. The commercial business district did expand to the properties across the street. So the properties you're referencing have been in the commercial business district, which was commercial marine at the time, since 1966. That was zoned, and then buildings were built. I don't know what happened in that process or with administration, but the purpose of the district was always to be commercial first and residential second.
I guess that would just be, and you guys may have talked over this, because that was just where I went and go, okay, this is what I'm looking at. So I, looked up a property, and was built in 1979, which would have been after that. But everything about it it's a single family home. So just so our brains can wrap around.
Yeah, I can go back and look at the building permit. I do know from a few of them that I've heard just stories through the community that they were built with the intent that they would have some kind of a business offering downstairs or up front. I mean, you look at the mayor's new residence has a very famous story that it was supposed to be a bank. It operated for one day, and then it no longer existed after that. So I can try to find what that history of why they were built the way they were built. But the zoning and the requirement for them to be a business first and a residence second did exist prior to the buildings.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, just to help clarify, our city manager did a good job. But the reason why those houses that you're talking about, that people keep talking about, were built as residents, is only because people were able to get away with it. They were zoned as a business first, secondary living quarters. And what happened was people moved there and hung up their survival suit, or made a couple of fishing ties downstairs and figured they could get away with it, and they did. And the city didn't do anything at the time, or didn't push it. But the bottom line is they were zoned as the marine commercial year in 1964 and after. So they've always had the designation of being a business. Did the city enforce it like they should have? No. And that's where we're at, and that's where we've been at for several years, of enforcing what we should be enforcing and not letting it go, like many, many things around town. But to answer your question, Ashley, they were long ago zoned as a business, and that's what they should be as. And I think one thing the council needs to remember, especially when we have this conversation about budget, is that our job is to bring in revenue to keep our city moving ahead and have services for our people to live here. And having businesses around town is important. And these three lots that are in question have always been, as far as have always been businesses, and that's what they should retain if we are trying to continue revenue for our community and build it as is. But this has been a long, this battle over these 3 properties, 2 in particular, has been going on for years. And yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else on comments, questions?
I want to thank you, Vivian, thank you for giving me that background. That definitely helps a lot. And that was kind of, I guess, my fear in that, because that's a lot of what I've discovered as we're really in the city office is doing an amazing due diligence on trying to make clear code, follow that code so that you don't have those gray areas. And I don't think there's I don't see a clean way of adjusting what I know is part of the root issue there. But I guess what I would just say is I don't know if there's any way of knowing, and this goes for anybody in that district. Again, you guys have had a lot of talk about this, but almost kind of trying to not negate battles or wars for any of that that's happened, but hopefully we can look at this as the fresh new plate, because we are in a different place than we were 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20, 30, 40. And it's nobody's fault if they were misled on certain properties, if other people were let to do things, and then so they felt like they were alienated because they couldn't. That's what we're dealing with. So I guess after talking to people, knowing, I guess being thankful I'm in an area that has choices, I would say we should all wear the hat of looking at the ability of choice right now. And right now we just need, exactly as Vivian said, to encourage industry and people to be here, and how we can make that doable, because you're going to have, there's going to be the people that are doing the industry, the people that just want to be invested here, that need to be here to help in all those ways. So as I've talked to the community members and now have clarification on that, that's where I'm going to direct my mind. Also being somebody that I guess doesn't have some of the baggage. I want to know the baggage and the history, but maybe don't have some of the emotional ties to it. So that's my feedback.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I appreciate your perspective on that. I'm just going to offer up a couple comments here, and I'm not going to really get into too much specifics tonight because I want to let the planning work through it. I'll probably offer up some comments directly to the planning department for my own, looking after my own business interests, obviously. But I'm just going to put everyone on notice right now. This will probably be one of your most contentious issues. Whatever comes out of planning, when it comes to us for final consideration, it will not be fun. Your stomach's probably going to turn, and you're going to have a lot of people calling you, telling you what you should do and how you should do it on both sides of the argument. First thing you're going to remember is it doesn't have to stay the way it's been, because that's the way it's been for the last 60 years. You take that to do whatever you want with it, but just because we've been doing it doesn't mean that's the way it has to be going forward. I can appreciate Ashley's remarks as a newer I've only been here 10 years, right? My mom's been here 30 years. There's a lot of folks that have been here for their whole lives and have seen changes, and there hasn't been a lot of change over the time. We are in a new world. We're in a different environment economically, everything than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago. As Ashley just said, things are different. You cannot be stuck in the ways of old. We need a fresh start. I look at a number of these recommendations here. And Vivian's 100% right. That's exactly why those were built that way, because no one did anything. There's been zero enforcement in my 10 years. As long as Vivian's been in Seldovia, she's probably seen zero enforcement action on any of these zoning issues, any of this, or very little. I mean, there's probably 100 items any one of us could go around in a day and say, you're out of compliance with any number of items in our code. We do not want to have, yes, we need to have law and order and a general understanding of our neighbors. That's why we have planning and zoning, right? Because it's not a free for all. We don't live outside of city limits, and it's not just we just don't get to have a junkyard in downtown city of Seldovia. It just doesn't work like that. Or 52 dogs next to your neighbor. If you want that, you get to go into an unincorporated area and you get to battle it out with guns, knives, and lawyers. That's how that works. Or your fists, right? That's how that works. Where we live, we need law, order, and some sort of normalcy. That's what we're doing right here. So when you start looking at the recommendations, keep all that in mind, because it's not going to be fun going through that. Again, though, we can be civil about it. We will have disagreements on this council. I highly doubt it will be a unanimous consensus of where we land. I just want everyone to be respectful, think through, because there's going to be a lot of highly opinionated people, myself included, and I will not be shy about my opinion on some of these things, as I'm sure most of you also will not be. So, yeah, and I hope we have a lot of people from the public weighing in and participating in this process. 6 people, the planet, we had a committee of, 8, 10, 12 people. Now it's going to run through planning. Now, then it's going to come to council for final action. This is a community-driven process, and that's where it needs to go. There's going to be a wide range of perspective on what we should do. So just wanted to throw that out there, but I want to thank publicly thank the committee for doing their work. I know that was probably very contentious at times. Some people feel alienated, or maybe that their point, was not being taken. And it's probably going to continue to be that way until this process is finalized. So, yeah, this will be one of the not so fun things we get to do as being, a public servant, if you will.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I tried to address this easily tonight because I want to be able to do some more homework on it. But I mean, I just have a couple comments. There are some things in here that, after I spent the whole afternoon, and I'm new to it, but I spent the whole afternoon reading the comprehensive plan that was done, and there was quite a bit of money spent on it, a lot of work. And there's several things that are not consistent with that plan that at this point, unless I get some better information, I wouldn't be in favor of it. And then that being said, I'm not in favor of adding any more requirements to the business district or any more hurdles for us to jump through down there, both for myself and the other existing businesses. So when it comes to that, this administrative permit, I realize it's already required. My question is it clarified what an administrative permit, what it actually entails? Is it clarified anywhere else other than the ordinance book under 185250? Is a clear definition of that anywhere else than there?
So thank you. Through the mayor, I would have to look at what you're referencing, but I believe you're referencing long-term residential rentals.
Right. And so under the long term, yeah, there's a long-term rental administrative permit.
Correct.
So that's what I'm asking. If the vote was brought to us tomorrow to approve administrative permits for short-term rentals, my answer is going to be no, because I don't have a clear definition of what that means.
Right. So that would be separate from long-term residential rentals, potentially, or together. It would depend on the process.
Right.
But the definition is included for long-term residential rentals. What that means is included under definitions. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Is there more of it's under definition, so it's in another place?
Of what the long-term residential rental is?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
administrative permit portion.
That is only under the
18 that
yeah.
Okay. And that, so for me, that's what I'd want to see is, I could care less whether it's got an A in the box or not, but I want to know what that implies. Does that make sense?
That's the only administrative permit. So it's only, okay, I need to look at what you're looking at. So it's under commercial business.
Right. So It's right here. It's this section.
Yeah.
Through here. So that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna go to a administrative permit for short-term rentals in this business district, I want to see the definition of that and everything that it entails. And then the other question I want to know is, aren't we kind of limiting the local business people to what they can do? And there's no changes for anybody outside the commercial district for
So
their Airbnbs.
thank you. Through the mayor, those excellent comments. No, there wasn't any other changes for other, there are a few recommendations that recommend looking at the zoning code or the zoning districts as a whole. In the discussion with the committee, it was made very clear by the committee that their focus was on the commercial business district. So that's why we still need to go through the planning commission process, because these recommendations impact the community as a whole, not just the commercial business district. And the topics that you guys touched on, there was not a consensus of the committee for either of them. And the recommendations are just that. They are recommendations from a group. They
get
still
that.
have a process to go through before they make it further. But it's good to hear your feedback on those topics, because that's what we want. And that's what the mayor addressed, is the public input, the feedback is what's going to drive how this moves forward.
Well, they would have got my feedback long ago.
Mhm.
And I think you know what that means.
Yeah.
But I decided I was going to wait to the end. But this stuff needs to be done complete before it comes back here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would like to point out one more thing. And that is, the group didn't agree on everything. The planning commission may not agree on everything. And like the mayor said, this group may not agree on everything, but everything that was mentioned was included. Nobody was left out. Nobody was alienated. It just may have been that some people, were in disagreement with other people, but it was
Correct.
still included.
No, I'm not implicating that. I'm just saying that I'm going to be a little tougher on, I'd like to see it not impact the commercial business district and the other businessmen that are in a community with myself and others. This whole thing really doesn't affect me, but it's going to. We didn't purchase that building down there with the understanding that we were not going to be able to do whatever we need to do to survive. So unfortunately, and I think that applies for anybody else that has a business in this town, is their wishes to be able to survive and whatever that takes.
I think I want to just leave a thought with people. And I think it'll go good off after John, because I know being that most of us on council are business owners, this will be a very good and rich discussion. And I think being a business owner that is not in this district, I've been looking at it. And as I told the mayor, I was grateful for, I have choices. Where I am is commercial, residential. And so I have my choices there of both, but I also have a multifaceted. We do and add what we need to, but as somebody outside of it that has those choices, I look at, I've dealt with the overnight rental people. I've dealt with the fishing industry people, the retail people, because I sell retail. We've got people that don't fish with us, come buy stuff from us. And what is really important is having industries in that downtown area, as I'm going to call it, our center, because that's where the port is. That's where people enter. And it doesn't have to all be businesses, but there's an opportunity there. And the business is any of those above. And I'll say that from, people looking for things to buy, looking for food to eat, and looking for places to stay. With the chamber, with the art council events that we're teaming up with the city, we're trying to start to spread out our tourism season. And I can tell you there's already weekends that people are having to stay in Homer for events that we're holding here in Seldovia right now. And it's not even April. And so that's a great thing. And I'm going to say, I'm not saying that like, oh my gosh, like that's a great thing because supply and demand is what you need for that growth. And so just keeping that in mind, and that's where I meant by the looking at things broadly and giving people those choices, as we're all thinking about we have to have rules, we have to have those codes, expectations, but looking at what is going to create the best opportunity for everybody. And those opportunities are going to help the businesses, but also the businesses help bring the families. I've been in the school all week. I've been able to see how families have been impacted and the things that the people that just live here that might not own a business, but work in town, and it all works together. And so really think about that, pull yourself aside and think of it as a whole and realize everybody's going to wear a different hat and we all share this little space. So that's what I want to leave for a thought.
I think, Ashley, to summarize what you're saying, for me, the way I take that is, what can we do to make our community better? Right? Simple as that.
Yes.
What can we do to make, when we're thinking through this, what can we do to make our community better? We all may have a different understanding of what better is, but generally, I think we all understand the reason we live in a small town is quality of life. Simple as that, right? It's, the concrete jungle, or it's a little more laid back and a little less concrete jungle and a little less rules, right? Not saying it's a free for all, but just generally that's my thoughts. What can we do to make our community better? So, all right. Any other, one last thing here. So a couple things. Yeah. Going forward here. Yeah. So this process, it might still take a year to work this out. I mean, there's 3 people on planning right now. And if we start dragging all the other districts into, as soon as you do something in this district and it's going to impact all the other districts, and you got to kind of look at that, right? So this may not be as fast as we're thinking that this is going to all happen, unless somebody is really organized and has an outline of moving through this quickly. But I don't know, because I think what I see, John, is kind of what you're up against. Every time you read one of these bullets and then you go dig. So I did the same thing. Open my comprehensive plan, start digging in that. Open Title 18, start digging in that. Well, I can tell you right now, Title 18 in the comprehensive plan, they don't even begin to match up. Very little do they match up. So you take that for what it's worth and how we're going to get around that, right? We're trying. And on that note, so back in 2021, November 8th, 2021, there's a little memorandum that you can find in the city's website. That's the 2021 review of Seldovia's comprehensive plan. That was performed by the planning and zoning, and that's from the chair, Allison Rain. There's a 9-page document of basically a scorecard of where we were at 14 years later, after, or whatever it was. So 2014 is when is the date of the current comprehensive plan. And so this was 21. So seven years later, right? A scorecard of where we were at based on some of those initial recommendations, with 24 goals and 42 recommendations. I would suggest everyone read that too. It's, it take you 20 minutes to read through that, but that's a good scorecard. Also, where we were at then, and think of where we're at now, along with going back and, you got to peruse the comprehensive plan again. And we try, that's a guiding document. It's not the law. We're never going to get everything that's on there. That was a vision from, previous folks in the community, a huge previous effort. I think there's been 3 of them since urban renewal. And you've got to look at all these. So you're going to find a lot of conflict, and that's why this is not going to be easy, right? So that's all I got. I'm done talking.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thanks for listening to me rant a little bit, but it is crunch time for us. We're looking at what we got to do to get the doors open here in the next 30, 45 days. And the last thing I want to deal with is 4 days of listening to everybody in this town, how they're unhappy about this. So I think we need to spend some time and go back to the board. I'm willing to put some notes together. But you're right. Every time I look in it, it just frustrates me all the more.
All right, thank you. Anyone else before we go to public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yep, go ahead.
I would just like to point out that you have included in your capital improvement program a comprehensive plan and zoning code update and review. Currently, it's a priority level 3. This is included because staff has indicated that there is a need to do a review of the comprehensive plan including the zoning code to ensure compatibility between the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. This is not uncommon. There are a lot of other municipalities going through this, including our neighbors across the street, Homer. Seward, I just heard from them. They're going to go through the same thing. It's actually a fairly common problem to have a zoning code and a comprehensive plan that do not talk to each other. So something to think about as we continue to go through the CIP process is what that priority is for having that completed. But this is not a task that we're going to complete in 3 or 4 days. As the mayor pointed out, this could have a whole nother year. This is a long process, and it could be helpful to bring in experts and third-party contractors to be able to work through this process with the community.
Yep, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that, Heidi. Okay, if no additional comments from council, do we have anyone signed up from the public to speak on this?
We have nobody signed up online.
Okay, all right.
In
Sounds
person, you
good.
don't have to. But we do have one person in the room.
Okay,
And
Then-
then
they're free to offer public comment if they like.
Hi, Epola Collier. Thanks. I was part of the subcommittee that worked on putting this all together, and I'm happy to answer questions if they come up on what we were thinking as a subcommittee on making some of these decisions. My main purpose of continuing the process is because I am a business owner in the business district. And I am trying to keep an eye on what my future looks like as a business owner and staying in business. I imagine you guys can assume which issue would mostly impact me as a short-term renter. And that was putting a permit process or additional requirements on running a short-term rental. And I was wanting to be part of the conversation. So I will continue to go forward and participate in the planning commission and hopefully sit in on more council meetings. But I am happy to help in whatever capacity I can as a subcommittee member.
Thank you, Ecola. Anyone have any questions for Ecola?
I don't have any questions for Mayor Campbell, but I have a couple comments. I appreciate your help with the committee, Nicola, and Heidi's as well, and all of you. I think it's a necessary process, but it's just frustrating, So I should have taken a different approach to this early on, but I didn't. So that's part of my frustration here today. And I think the council knows what that means, but I think in the future here, until at least we get through this, I'm going to have to maybe be a little bit more involved if I want to see it go in the direction I think the community would like to see it go.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone else?
no, but Mr. Mayor, nobody signed up online, but we do have 2 members online from the subcommittee who did want to comment.
Yeah, as long as we can verify who they are, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so we have I think Randy and then Jerry.
Okay. Yep, go ahead, Randy, if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
So I just,
Yeah, if you
I
can
want-
state your name, Randy, just for the record.
okay, this is Randy Sweet, and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. So just to kind of circle back, at the request of businesses who came to the Planning Commission, we came to the city council to establish the subcommittee so that the business community in particular in that area could provide comments. So so that I just wanted to ground it in where we started. The other part of it is that the subcommittee and the planning commission are advisory to you, to the city council. So nothing is going to happen that you aren't going to be able to review and weigh in on and decide what is the best for the community. I think one of the things that was enlightening to me is that we don't have alignment between our strategic document and our ordinance. And I think that is an important thing. It's understandable because the process for doing things is different for comprehensive planning and for creating ordinances, but it may be something as discussions are held that we keep an eye out for alignment as opposed to divergence. And if there is a divergence that's needed, that there's a conscious documentation that, okay, we know this says this, but given the things that have occurred over the past 10 or 12 years, we're electing to do Y because that's what the current conditions require. I think that the subcommittee was at a high level was focused on continuous improvement based on the things that they knew. So they're bringing information to our community about it. And so even if there are divergent views, it just seems like being able to take that information, why is it in there, and then how do we move forward in a way that's, I think, helpful to the community. It doesn't, I don't know that it needs to be contentious. It's just, do we understand what our neighbors' concerns are? And then as we move forward, perhaps there's a strategy of focusing on the things that we agree on that truly help make the ordinances better, because there was conflict in what it was being said within the ordinance itself. And so that would be a normal continuous improvement kind of process. Another thing that I've heard is, and this concerns one of the contentious issues, is if there's a discussion about rezoning, then there's apparently a process for doing that. So that would be done according to whatever rules that we have as a city, and it wouldn't necessarily be done in an ad hoc basis from a committee. The last thing I'll talk about is the issue of enforcement. I've heard a lot said about, well, people, quote unquote, people are able to not comply with things because they got away with it, but we don't have a method of enforcement. We don't pay for an enforcement officer, and I don't know if our community wants that kind of an approach. But if you don't have accountability, you don't end up with what you want, because what we're doing is we're saying we want one thing and we're not making sure that people are held to a standard. So that's just something at a strategic level to think about, and how that would fit in our community. And I don't have a I don't have an answer to it. I just know that if you say something and don't make it happen, you're not going to have a good situation because you can't. So, any rate, I wanted to also thank Heidi and Liz for the amazing work that they did to support the subcommittee and the members of the subcommittee, because people put in a lot of time and spent a lot of thinking time trying to come up with answers. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Appreciate your comments. Yeah, I think you make a number of good points there. And yeah, looking forward just to seeing how this, this whole process is gonna play out. So yeah, I certainly don't envy you guys for, the additional amount of time that you have ahead of you to, try to work through this process. So thank you for your commitment on it, and much appreciated. Any other questions or comments for Randy?
Mayor Campbell, I just have one for Randy. I appreciate your comments, Randy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Liz, you said Jerry, I believe Jerry Stranick was on the line as well?
Yeah, Jerry, if you want to go ahead and state your name and you can speak.
Hit unmute. Jerry Stranick.
And go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. Yeah, I first, really appreciate how, I think you, and I kind of anticipated this, that at this level on the council, this is where the buck ends. This is where the decisions are made, but you started with a subcommittee, it's going to go through the planning committee and so it's due process, and that's great to see. The level of involvement was started off really good. I kind of got I want to, first of all, Allison and Randy were, great leaders in this thing and stuck by it. And it happened. I attended meetings a lot and I didn't speak. I just kind of stayed in the background. But it's great to see due process. It's great to see younger people just taking the reins and jumping on. Really good to see that. So, but everybody, when it started kind of like not an ad hoc committee. It was like a kangaroo court at the beginning. There was no order to it. There was no voting. There was anybody who wanted to be on that committee was on the committee, chose a chairman by, I think I can do that, and so forth. And anyway, it was just, it started off really loose, and that kind of bothered me in a way. But then at the same time, it actually worked out pretty well too. And there's several points that I make on this. I am probably one of the older people in the community. I was part-time and then full-time now, but bought our first home in 76 and I started seeing patients in 73. And most of the people on that committee weren't even born yet. But anyway, it's I think one of the things that we should do is look at the hindsight of some of the elders and some of the people that have left this community. I think the Chamber of Commerce should be doing this anyway, but try to find out why people left, because that's what we're trying to do, is keep a stable force here of people who want to invest. And I've invested plenty in town. And yeah, I see things happening that sometimes bother me, but yet at the same time, I know the city government has to exist to keep things going. And, where else can we get running water and sewer that works and live 16 miles off the grid and still have nature all around us, where we can disappear into the wilderness in a matter of minutes, And the same thing, we got a 40-minute head start on the Homer boats to the fishing grounds, and so forth too. So there's a lot of it. Everybody loves this town, and we have a force of people that are in the blogs and everything of the Chamber of Commerce thing, a 700 and some or 800 and some, I don't know how many are on that, that at least once a year or so tune in and see what's going on, and they look at the letters and so forth. So you got a real base, I mean, gosh, it's a huge amount of people. Everybody comes to this place. If I had a little tape recorder under the boardwalk, people saying, oh, I just love this place. Wouldn't it be great to live here? And a lot of them have come and some of them have gone, and but it's a great process going on. Everybody had an agenda that was on that committee. Nearly everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, nearly everybody on that committee had an agenda. And of course, my agenda was the new boardwalk inside the harbor, down 5 or 6 feet lower than the ground level, and being able to have people connect to it from the businesses if they want, and the residents, so they didn't want to, they didn't have to connect to it, and so forth. But so I got 19 out of 20 people to sign on to it, and one party decided not to, and so it's the second time I've been shot down in the 25 years I've been trying to do this, and so it's my last shot. So, but anyway, I didn't want to dwell on that. I think the process is good. You're doing the best you can. It's hard. Businesses can't be forced to be businesses. You can't be forced to. You can't force people to turn it into a business. When the business is going to be there, I mean, everybody that's renting has rentals. If they had another successful business that they could put in there, they'd do it in a hot second and they wouldn't rent anymore, So you have to go with the yin and yang. There's lots of different formulas they looked at and controlling that and so forth. Yes, the waterfront property is probably the most valuable. There's only one part of it, and so forth. It's just the best place to be. And it was probably, abused at the beginning, but it was only a couple. But then everything is morphing in this whole attitude of how to make it better and so forth. But I think that with the younger people stepping in, I'd still have a lot of faith in it. Just say, I think you're doing the right thing. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate your comments on that and your perspective. And you said something there that did kind of spurred a thought here too that I was going to share earlier, and you just touched on it. And I agree with you. You're 100% right. The business can't be dictated. It's free market enterprise. Obviously, is what America was built on. That's what's going to dictate whether or not your business is successful, right? Just because you have a business, you might have the greatest idea and greatest business in the world in Seldovia, Alaska. But if there's nobody to come there and spend money in your business, just because somebody says you have to have a business, guess what? You have no business. It's simple. So I think that's another thing to just contemplate while we're working through this too, right? I mean, we got a real big balancing act here of our waterfront and the majority of those properties. But you cannot, Jerry's 100% right. You cannot force people to, you can force them, I guess, but it's not going to be successful and they're going to go bankrupt and then they're leaving. That's what's happened. Then you got another empty building or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, which is anyone that's been here a while can see that. You see the empty buildings, you see the for sale signs, and you know why, because there's no successful businesses in those certain specific properties. So, I'll leave it at that. Jerry, thanks again for participating in that process. Obviously a little ways to go here. And I agree. The perspective of the elders, which you certainly are in that category now, and then the perspective of the younger, newer folks such as, Ashley, Ecola, younger business owners. That's fantastic. I mean, we get a wide range of perspective, and I think that's what we need. That's what we need to be successful in this process.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else, Liz, or is that it on public?
No, that's everybody, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Sounds good. All right. We'll go ahead and bring it back. Any additional last minute comments before we wrap this up tonight on the Planning Commission report? All right, sounds good. So we'll have no action on this. This was purely an informational discussion item. Again, encourage everyone to participate, either written or with oral comments as the planning process plays out over the next undetermined amount of time. So, Heidi, anything else? Or you're good with that?
That's great, Mr. Mayor. I would put a plug out there that we do still need or have a vacancy for one planning commission seat. So if anybody wants to be even more involved in the process and join the planning commission, please submit a letter of interest to the city. That can be approved by the mayor and then verified by or confirmed by the council. So putting that out there, we could use one more member.
Great, good plug, Heidi. All right, let's see. Item N, City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I always say I'll try to keep it short and sweet, and I hardly ever do, so I'm going to stop saying that. And I do feel like I should just say one more thing, that there may have been some contentious topics, especially that came up at the end and the beginning, but working through that process and seeing the public come together and form this committee, or portions of the public, and really be in agreement on pretty much every item except for 2, and provide valuable feedback and input that could make a difference in this community moving forward, and provide vision and guidelines and help promote the future, was very awe-inspiring. That's my favorite part of government and being a public servant. So I hope everybody can hold heart, and that while there may have been 2 items that weren't agreed on, the process itself was just really, really awe-inspiring to go through and see that level of commitment and input provided by the public. So I hope we can continue that up as we go forward. And I want to thank everybody involved. For City Manager's Report, just to try to do a brief update on projects and activities. It's been very, very busy, so no long paragraphs in here of main priorities or main focuses of information. Just we're going a million different directions all the time, but we're seeing good progress on all items. So with that, after the last meeting, I was directed to write a letter to AMHS, voicing some of the council's not unhappinesses, that's not the right word, but voicing concerns that a decision was made to pull a service from the community without input from the community, and that we do want to continue working with AMHS per Councilmember Keithley's feedback to look at different dry dock times for the sorry, I'm tired, for the Testamina, and that we would like to work with them for a supplemental service in the future. Commissioner Anderson responded in appreciation of the communication and that he'd continue to work with us. I did receive a call from Director Tornga yesterday, and I wasn't able, or Monday, but I wasn't able to reconnect with him. It was a message. So I'm hoping to get back with him during this week and just be able to continue with that communication with AMHS. They've been very receptive, and I appreciate that. Jackloff Uplands DNR correspondence. I was also directed to write a letter to DNR. Both of those letters are attached. I did receive a response back from DNR that they would follow up with a response in a timely manner. So when we receive that, I will provide that back to council, and we can see what the next steps are to continue that discussion. Septic lift station, we did receive an estimate for the repair for the job. It was $66,000. I know I said 75 in the work session, and that's because there's additional parts that are not included in this estimate that we have already began ordering. We also sent out for 4 additional bids and received back a no bid response from all 4. I am meeting with DEC tomorrow to discuss next steps with funding. And as said, parts have been ordered, including the pedestal, and the temporary pump continues to hold. So we just keep hoping that keeps happening. The Sluice Sewer Improvements Project and funding for the design of the sewer treatment facility improvements project. I received cooperative project agreements for both projects and signed and submitted them back to DEC. So they'll continue making headway on those. We've received 43 out of 63 business licenses that we have sent out for renewal. That's pretty good for March. And there's a the end of March deadline for, actually, it might be further on from that. We did change that deadline. It might be May for seasonal businesses. So I'm guessing that some of those businesses that we haven't heard back from, they either change or they're seasonal. We get a few new businesses as we go, but that process has seemed to be pretty streamlined and smooth. And we appreciate everybody who's already responded. Job vacancies, you may have noticed we posted a position for line handler, groundskeeper, and public works operator. Sadly, it was operator Will Brunn's last day today. He is on to some summer adventures and work. Potentially could be back in the fall, but we have listed the position for another year-round full-time employee. It was left open-ended for 4 levels of public works operator employment, being operator in training, operator 1, operator 2, and lead operator. We have received 3 applications for that position. I think they would probably all relatively be operator in training or maybe operator 1. We have begun the interview process. We're hoping to complete that by the end of this week and get the position filled. So we can get somebody shadowing and working with operator Cameron in the next week or 2. And then we'll be looking at other potential positions in the future that need to be filled for public works. Groundskeeper, we have an applicant. Line handler, we have an applicant. So we're beginning to move forward with those positions as well. I had a discussion with John Gruber, who worked with us last summer and previously, and he is willing and happy to continue to fill in. He was on call through the winter if we needed additional assistance, and we did not. We appreciate him for being willing to do that. And similar for the summer, he's willing to fill in and help out on a part-time basis, and including, I just asked if he was interested in doing some of the harbor work that we've discussed, replacing some of the planking down there. And he helped with the repair from last year. So is familiar with the process and said he would definitely be interested in that. So we're hoping to get him on. AML, we talked about in the last city manager's report, a request for heavy equipment for a CDS bundled request, and we were able to submit that request for a backhoe. I did hear back from AML that they were successful in their call out and received, as they said, too many requests, but that it would all work out and it would be good. So seems like that's a thing that communities are really needing, and I hope it goes well for us. CDS appropriation request. We are set at the end of this week to submit 3 requests for the city for CDS appropriations through Murkowski's office. 1 for the raw water transmission line gap funding, even though the funding was received previously through the CDS appropriation. When I reached out to Murkowski's office, they confirmed that while normally they wouldn't do matching federal dollars for a project with federal funding, because it had been 2 years. It's been over a year since the previous funding, and they really like to see completed projects, that they would entertain a request for the raw water transmission line. They said it might not be as high a priority as some of the other projects, but they do really want to see it completed. So we will submit that, as well as a request for funding for the fuel retail and distribution building improvements projects. That's the roof of the Seldovia fuel and lube retail space, and the roof and siding for the retail building on the dock. And the lastly is the multipurpose building improvement project. We have started to receive letters of support for all three, including a letter of support from the Chamber of Commerce for the multipurpose building improvement project. So we're thankful to see that. And that'll be for new siding, insulation, and paint for this building. So we'll see if we receive any of those. And keep in mind that they're all about a 2-year out. But it's an opportunity. If we did receive it, I mean, they'd be about 2 years out. Senior meals, I want to give you guys a heads up that we have been cut an additional $4,000 for FY25. We will be holding a bigger discussion on that during a upcoming budget discussion on how to proceed. I think we're going to be looking at some changes, maybe some hard changes of cutting some of that service, unless we continue to search for other funding opportunities, but they just don't seem to be there at this point. So we'll keep searching. We'll keep trying to be out of the box, but we may be cutting some of that service moving forward. City Clerk Professional Development. I wanted to give a shout out to City Clerk Diamond. She received a scholarship for the Professional Development class PD1 in Tacoma, Washington in the first week of June. From personal experience, I can't speak enough about how much you learn and how fantastic the networking is, and really what you can bring back to your community from these trainings. So I just want to congratulate her on that. And Seward Tsunami Operations Workshop, again, City Clerk Diamond and Harbor Master Janet Peterson will be attending that next week in Seward. It's state sponsored, so they pay for travel and lodging. And we heard news today from Aviva with the National Weather Service that they were wanting to come to Seldovia and hold a ceremony for us being a tsunami ready community. But she asked if they could take the opportunity, since Liz and Layla would be at the Seward's workshop, if they could do a ceremony there for Seldovia being tsunami ready. And I said, please do, and take lots of pictures. So unless you guys really want to hold one here, that's the path forward. We're working ahead on the cybersecurity grant program. I mentioned in the last report, we received a notice of violation from our DEC wastewater permit inspection. Mark with ARWA, who works with Kevin Schoeneman, who I know you guys have seen here in the community often, graciously agreed to come down last week and work with Radzi. And he's again here this week, so that we can provide a response to DEC, as well as take care of some of those items that were noted. And that's due by mid-April. Kenai Peninsula Borough, we have started working with the Office of Emergency Management and their contractor on the hazard mitigation plan update. It's going to be the city of Seldovia and the city of Seward. And right now they provided us a spreadsheet of all of our goals and then how they would be, or how best they fit into Kenai Peninsula Borough's goals. And so, as you imagine, it's quite the process, but it's very exciting to see. And in speaking with the state, they've highly recommended it. So we'll continue with that. Personnel policy, I did want to let you know that it was reviewed and signed by all employees except for 2 who had been traveling. We're hoping to catch them in the near future. The de-escalation training, unfortunately, was canceled again. The weather that day was just horrid. So we are going to try to reschedule for mid-April now, because I'll be leaving. We have Layla and Liz out next week. There's just a lot of staff traveling. Diane's out right now. So hoping to catch as many people as possible mid-April. And as I said, I will be on personal leave April 4th to April 14th. I believe we have Finance Officer Yeager on as acting city manager for the first portion of that week, and then it'll transfer over to Harbor Master Jan Peterson. So we'll make sure it's covered while I'm away. And the city logo contest, stay tuned. We'll see how that goes. Everything else is still ongoing. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you, Heidi. Any questions or comments from council for the city manager?
Did we miss this fire department stuff that's in here, or is it still on the agenda?
Excellent question. So the ordinance was introduced tonight,
Okay.
and then there'll be a public hearing at the next meeting as well as a resolution for the
Okay,
bylaws.
so is it- okay.
Yeah, it's a two-step process because
Okay. Any other questions, comments for Heidi? Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate all the information. Let's see, item O, informational items not requiring action. Next regular scheduled meeting will be April 8th. April 8th meeting will be postponed until April 15th. So at 6 p.m. And as Heidi stated, the city manager will be on personal leave away from the 5th through the 12th. So that works out with having that meeting after she's back. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Kennedy.
No, just appreciate everybody listening and open dialogue tonight and all the work from the city staff as usual. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Swick.
No comment.
Okay, Keithley,
No comment.
Langbart,
No comment.
and Rojas. And it looks like we might have lost Vivian there somewhere along the way.
Yes, she had to sign off early, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, that is it. Same for me. Thank you to the staff. Appreciate everything, you guys. And yep, good meeting, good dialogue, everyone. Appreciate all the comments and feedbacks. Nice to have a little additional public comment tonight. So that was good. Our next regular meeting will be held on April 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have
I'll
a second?
that.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn with a second. Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Okay, have a good night.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Good night.
Well, there's your e-tufts wearing them for 16.